Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So today we'll do a fairly comprehensive overview after about 800 kilometers of driving on 10.69.2.2 of how it's doing so far. So you'll see this scorecard throughout the video. I've updated it a bit from the last version that you've seen in previous videos. Generally, the improvements are fairly incremental, so the pieces that are circled in red here are the areas where the version has improved over the last version. But in general, the improvements I've noticed have been in overall smoothness and not so much in specific features that have improved by leaps and bounds. So you can see the same type of incremental improvement in the data I've been tracking on the evguycanada.com site. Thanks to EV for putting this together, this in-car tracker. So you can see over the last few versions that the distance to disengagement on city FSD, which I run on most areas because not many of our highways support the highway version. So small improvements, but nothing not 5 or 10 times better, but potentially about twice as good. You can see the breakdown of the disengagements. Most of them are still lane detection, interaction with other cars, interaction with people. So still the same types of disengagements that we've seen in the past videos. So for the rest of the video here, I will go through some detailed examples and show you the video of the types of disengagements. Of course, remember that 98%, 99% of the time the car is driving perfectly fine. I'm focusing on the disengagements because that's where the improvements will come, hopefully. So thanks for watching the video, and please like and subscribe if you would like to support the channel. So the first snippet I'll show you is some roundabouts. So the roundabouts have improved marginally since the last version, as you can see here, with a couple extra percent. But in general, we're still having a few problems. So I'll show you a few examples here, and you can judge for yourself. This one is actually pretty successful. So the roundabouts I'm using here are pretty complex roundabouts. You can see I've used before on the way to the airport here. There's one roundabout on the right side of the highway, and then it goes over an overpass. There's another roundabout, and then there's a number of other roundabouts towards the airport. So here we are coming in. It was hesitating a bit, so I used the accelerator a bit to nudge it into the roundabout. And in this case, we're staying in the left lane, which is correct. And there's not much traffic, so fairly easy scenario. Then we come over the overpass, and in this case, we'll be staying in the left lane and continuing out the second exit. So again, I had to nudge it a bit to get it going into the roundabout, even though there was no traffic. And a little bit of hesitation around this corner, but then it proceeds fairly smoothly through. The last piece is a very small roundabout, again without traffic, so fairly successful in that one. Proceeds through without hesitating, so that's quite good. So I'll get myself turned around here, and in the next clip show you the whole thing in reverse. This is coming from the airport direction, so there you saw the creep line, which is a new functionality, turning left. And here it veers into the right lane and then realizes it's in the wrong lane and veers back into the left lane without really much notification. So if anybody had been behind me in that case, they would have been fairly confused. Here again it hesitates a bit, and I have to nudge it through, but then it does make it through. So, you know, 75% probably on those roundabouts without traffic. With traffic, it doesn't really handle it very well. Here again, it's hesitating even though there's really no traffic coming. And then this is a bit odd, of course. It does split into two lanes midway through the roundabout here. So no wonder it's a bit confused. But it does find the correct lane here, the right lane to exit the roundabout heading north. So hopefully the score I gave it here makes sense. It's about a 75% overall. The next part I'll show you is picking the wrong lane. So when this has happened for the past few versions, It's pretty disconcerting when you're going 80 or 100 kilometers an hour down the highway and all of a sudden dekes into the right turn lane and is barreling towards a concrete barrier at 80 kilometers an hour. In this case, it's a slower speed, but you can see it turns into the right turn lane even though the navigation was clearly showing it going straight. So it must have thought there was an extra lane wide open. So I had to disengage here and go through the bus lane back into the proper lane. So that's still happening fairly routinely. The next one here is another example in Vancouver. So a single lane splits into two lanes, even though it's not all that obvious. There's only one light. I'm supposed to be over to the right behind that car, so I take over and get behind it properly. So all those types of things are still problematic. The next one's interesting. Left turn across traffic used to be horrible. Now with the new Chuck Cook improvements, you'll see it's a little bit better. So here I'm coming out of an area, residential type area, and you can see it's starting to map the creep line there as well as the median. So this actually took me by surprise. I didn't realize it would do it at this section. So it fairly confidently moved into the median, waited for that truck to go by, and then it jumped out. There was a car coming. Unfortunately, you can't see it, so I took over. So it seems to be working. I'll have to try it a few more times to see how successful it is on repeated attempts. The next one, I'll show you a bit of parking lot fun. Parking lots aren't really intended to be handled by this version, but I like to try it once in a while to see what it does. In previous versions, it was fairly successful actually navigating some parking lots, but then other times it gets very confused. So I came into a mall here and I didn't quite realize where I'd set the navigation point to. And I was a bit surprised when it continued through, but I let it go to see what would happen. So here we have a three-way stop, which it handled properly. And then I noticed it was turning left, which is actually up onto the rooftop of this mall, and there's some extra parking up there. I did happen to get up here at one point on a much earlier version, 10.11 or something, and it wouldn't handle this at all. It just said incline too steep and it wouldn't continue. This time it did continue with a little bit of nudging, and of course the parking lot is empty here, so nothing too exciting in terms of vehicle interactions. I just wanted to see what would happen. So you can see that with a little bit of nudging, it does find the parking lot, I guess, drivable space here. It is picking up on some of the lines you can see and driving in the lanes and not in the parking areas. So here's where the navigation actually ended in this case, but I nudged it forward a little bit more anyways to see where it would go. It was looking like a fairly promising turn, but then it almost hit the car. But of course, once it does get close to something like that, it does see it and drive around it. Then I thought maybe I could nudge it back down the ramp, but I didn't realize I didn't have a navigation set here, so it was debating between left and right and ended up turning right around the parking lot again, so I disengaged. So that was a bit fun. The next one is driving onto the ferry. Similar to construction site scenarios, of course, driving onto ferries and construction sites requires the car to be able to see the traffic control personnel and pay attention to their direction. So here you wait for the ferry in a lineup, and then eventually the lineup moves, and you drive either up the ramp or down the ramp, depending on which lane you're being directed into, to drive onto the ferry. So in this case, we're driving up the ramp, and at the top of this ramp, you'll notice that there's a number of different ways to turn, and that's because there are 2 or 3 different docks that the ferries can dock into, and depending on which one's being used, that's where the cars are being loaded onto. So in this case, we're in the left-hand dock, so at the end of this ramp here, we'll be turning left. I do have it on FSD right now, you'll notice. I just like to try it just for fun. Here it does get pretty confused, even though it is coned off to the right here. you'll see the tentacle heading off to the right and trying to head onto the ramp that doesn't have a ferry on it right now. This would be incredibly challenging, I think, for FSD to figure out. Of course, in general, you need to just follow the car in front of you, but not always. As we get onto the ferry here, each of the lanes that are driving on here split into 4 lanes, 4 on the left side of the ferry, 4 on the right side of the ferry, and you have to pay attention to the traffic control person, the ferry worker, and look at which lane you're supposed to go in. And of course, sometimes you're following the car in front of you, but other times the car in front of you is being directed to go into one lane and you are the first car to go into the next lane over, for example. So something like that I think would be incredibly challenging for the AI to figure out, but we'll see what happens at some point. If they want complete FSD, it theoretically should be able to handle something like this, but I'm not really sure how. So I disengaged here as I was making the turn, of course, and then I re-engaged it, I believe, as I was finishing up the drive into the lane. In past examples, it has tried to deke out of the lane and move into the next lane over. So of course it's not really made to handle, but I just wanted to show it anyways. So that's why it gets a pretty much non-existent score on my metric here. So I'll be doing some more videos on these later. Right turn into traffic, I don't have a clip of right now, but I'll try to add it in another video. It's still not great. It does jump out when it shouldn't, so I've had to stop it multiple times. School zones, it still doesn't really handle. Sometimes it does go 30, but late at night or at the wrong time, and then doesn't speed up to the regular speed again in my area. The next parts here, speed bumps are still pretty hit and miss. About 50% of them it'll slow down for. Rain and inclement weather I should be able to try fairly soon, but I haven't really had much rain, so haven't had a chance to try it out yet. The other scenarios at the bottom there are things that I've thought of testing. Some I have tested. HOV lanes, it doesn't really handle very well at all. And the rest you can see there as indicated. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the content. I'm trying to grow the channel to keep me motivated to continue with these videos. So maybe you can share one with your friends and ask them if they'd like to subscribe. Please let me know the types of scenarios you'd like to see in the comments. Thanks very much. Have a good day.